Hello and welcome to the podcast PFI Talks, which is brought to you by Prague Finance Institute and the leading Czech Economics Research Center, CERGE-EI. It is my pleasure to welcome Jan Švejnar, one of the co-founders of CERGE-EI and also a professor of economics at Columbia University. Hello.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Indeed, between Columbia and CERGE-EI in Prague, it's a great combination. I'm glad to be with your institute.
The year 2020 has been the year of pandemic. And what was the first defining moment when you realized that things won't be as they used to be and we'll probably have to get used to something completely different?
Well, of course, I was in New York at Columbia. Halfway through the semester, we realized that the situation is much more serious than we thought at first. At first, we thought this may be just a phenomenon that's mostly in Asia, will not really affect the United States and the rest of the world, but it did, and we had to switch to online lecturing, and so we realized that the world is different and that it very likely will be different for a while to come, and that things may indeed change the form of communication in general.
Some people think that the COVID-19 pandemic is going to completely redefine the way we do things, the way we live. So others, on the other hand, think that the life is going to go get back to normal as it always does.
I think it will be a bit of each. I think at the level of the economy, the way the firms, corporations will behave, I think they will shorten the value chain. Suppliers, they will want to have suppliers closer to them than they had before. That means within the North American free trade area, let's say, within Europe. On the other hand, we've switched so much into the digital technology that I think that's a globalizing tendency. So there we are definitely going to be different. I think that our work life will be much more, not fully, but partially, let's say, online. And so there will be a new mode of operation that I think will be quite different. There are questions to what extent people will travel less than they used to. So there are quite a few question marks as well.
For someone like you, an educator, if I may put it this way, how do you see sort of like transferring knowledge, transferring expertise when you're doing it online as opposed to when you do it in the classroom?
So obviously, it's a little bit more cumbersome and impersonal, and we are learning how to try to overcome that so that we try to do breakout sessions so that groups of students talk to each other online while the professor is sort of visiting the different chat rooms, if you want. So there are negative aspects that are obviously very, very important. On the other hand, one has some positive aspects too. So I can, in the same day, give a lecture in Asia and in Europe and in the United States, right, which one couldn't do before. I can bring many more speakers from all over the world to speak to my students. So that's a boon. So in some sense, we learn how to take advantage of the disadvantageous situation.
What is the key lesson that you personally have learned during 2020? And what do you think decision makers or policy makers should have learned during this pandemic year?
I think that what we've all realized is that the pandemic, the problem may be much more serious than was at the beginning estimated. And that one really has to take it very seriously and be quite assertive and aggressive in tackling it. That it is a virus that can return. And so one has to be always vigilant and take measures which are of such nature that one contains the virus at least until the time that a vaccine or vaccines will be available.
One last question. What's your take on looking forward, how the economic development, globally speaking, is going to pan out? How quickly is it going to emerge from the recession and the so far unseen levels of fiscal debts that the pandemic has brought, and also the sort of trade tensions within the world in terms of sort of tensions against globalization? Where do you see the world to be in a years from today?
So I think that there are several important factors at work here. I think everybody is trying to get the economies going again. So the governments have not hesitated to carry out fiscal expansion. Central banks have been flooding these economies with liquidity. Some, obviously, countries more than others. China is the one that's recovering the fastest. Of course, they have a much more authoritarian approach to everything than other countries. But I think that we'll see a recovery in the United States. We'll see recovery in Europe. I expect that, as was the case during the financial crisis and the Great Recession, that the United States will actually have a faster recovery. It'll take more decisive measures in order to achieve
faster than Europe, for example.
Faster than Europe, yeah. China, I think, that is a case apart. China is really able to keep growing even this year, not as fast as usual, but they've bridged, in some sense, the gap, the recession there through domestic spending, which is what they did in the past as well, during the Great Recession, during the Asian crisis. So there the government is willing to do very, very major fiscal expansion, and they're doing it again this year. But yes, so I think that there will be a recovery throughout the world, uneven, slower in the US than in China, and slower in Europe than in the United States.
Says Jan Švejnar, professor of economics at Columbia University and co-founder of the Czech Economics Institute, CERGE-EI. Thank you, and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you.